What's up? Welcome to episode 23 of the Sound of Sergey podcast. Thank you for joining in. And usually I start these saying that I want to tell you a story, that I want to make a joke, but instead I want to start this by introducing a concept. Now, don't click off. I know that most of my listeners are Gen Z, which means their attention span does not exist. You tell them hi, and they've already forgotten what your name is. So, bear with me. I'm about to introduce a concept, because the concept will help me tell a story. The concept is something called assertiveness, specifically assertiveness training. I am a minor in psychology, majoring in film, minoring in psychology. Now, in psychology, anyone who's minoring, majoring, even someone who knows a very base amount of psychology will know this. What they will know, like the back of their hand, it is a fundamental, it's usually in the Intro 101 classes, is the Big Five, which are the 5 personality traits, which are... Let me remember. There's conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion. Those are the big 5. They're 5. What I want to focus on, what I want to zoom in on, is agreeableness. Now, what does it mean to be agreeable? By the psychological definition, what it means to be agreeable is basically, well, I'll paint it to you in an example. The example is you are with your friends. Your friends want to eat at Chuck E. Cheese. Now, you and your friends are 20 years old. You think, I'm a bit old for Chuck E. Cheese, as are they. But they say they want to eat at Chuck E. Cheese because they want to be happy and play in the ball pit, feed tickets to the ticket muncher, and then take some pizza and shove it down their slimy throats like a child. That's what they want to do. But you really think, actually, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. I don't want to go eat at Chuck E. Cheese pizza. If you are disagreeable, all 3 of your friends may go, hey, I want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. But if you're disagreeable, you will go, hey, that's a bad idea. We shouldn't go to Chuck E. Cheese. I want to go to someplace else. Now, if you are an agreeable person, your 3 friends will say, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese and jump on the trampoline and play race cars and do the skee ball and play deal or no deal. If you're agreeable, even if you don't want to go to Chuck E. Cheese, you will say, okay. Because if you're agreeable, you don't like conflict at all. You really want to avoid disagreeing with someone, hence the name, agreeable. Now, I am on the more disagreeable side. That's my personality. So as a disagreeable person, I can't even put myself in the headspace of someone who wants to avoid conflict. Like, I'd call people slabs of meat, I'd punch people in the face and call them gross, and I do all this. I realize in my heart that I should be more agreeable. It would be more advantageous to me. It would make my life a lot easier. It'd make me a lot happier. But I am a disagreeable person. So at the end of the day, if my friends say, hey, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese, I'm going to say, no. Let's not go to Chuck E. Cheese. Now, if you are very agreeable, traditionally what you do is you do what's called assertiveness training, because the opposite of being agreeable is being assertive. So if you're very agreeable, you need assertiveness training, which is the concept that I would like to talk about. I have a friend. I've mentioned him before. Let's call him Gavin. Gavin, I'll put it this way. He needs some assertiveness training. I tell him that, and he insists he does not. But I know, as a psych minor, which means I know everything there is to know about psychology, I believe he does need assertiveness training, and I'll tell you why. The story I'm about to tell you is true. It did not happen to me, but it happened to Gavin. But here's what happened. Here's the rundown. So I want you to picture this. About 6:30 p.m. at night on a Saturday. Beautiful golden light is coming through the window, transitioning to the beautiful purple, cloudy blue hour. There's a light mist outside. The sidewalks are damp and reflective. The last chirping of the birds from the day are starting to die down. It's starting to get dark. It's a nice night. I am hanging out with my 3 friends, Gavin, Colton, I've talked about Colton before in the last episode, and a friend, Hayden, who I've not mentioned but is part of our friend group. So me, Gavin, Colton, Hayden are all hanging out at their dorms. All 3 of them live in a different dorm hall than I do. I go to them. We hang out, and it's a beautiful night. We're hanging out. Everything is perfect. We're talking. We're laughing. We're having a great time. We're having some snacks. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden, Gavin starts getting ready. And I'm confused. I'm like, why are you getting ready? Where do you need to go? And he goes, oh, I have a date tonight. And I go, well, what do you mean you have a date? This is news to me. And he goes, oh yeah, I was on Tinder and I matched with a girl and I'm going to go on a date with her tonight. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Who is it? And then Gavin gets sort of shy and he won't tell me what's going on. And he's like, oh, it's a girl. She seems cool. And I'm like, oh, but who is it? Can you, like, what's she look like? Basic questions you'd ask. And he goes, oh, I don't know. And he's very avoidant of my questioning. And I go, why are you so avoidant of my questioning? He goes, he basically doesn't have an answer. And I'm like, listen, Gavin, if you don't want to tell me what's going on, that's all right. But I didn't say this, but I'm telling you this now. The reason why I was so curious is because Colton and Hayden did already know who it was. And it was like they knew every detail. I was like, well, what's the differential here? Why did he tell them but not me? What about me makes him think that I will react negatively if I know who it is? And so a bunch of thoughts are racing through my head. I'm like, oh, it's an ex of mine, isn't it? And like that was my first thought. I was like, oh, he's probably with an ex of mine. That's why he's not saying who it is. And so eventually I just look Gavin straight in the eyes and go, Gavin, I don't care. I'm not going to be offended. If it is my sister, I will not be offended. But just who is this person? And he goes, it's a woman named, and I'll call her Destiny. It's a woman named Destiny. And I go, oh, so you met Destiny on Tinder? And he goes, yeah, I met her on Tinder. And I go, well, what's she look like? What are her pictures? Show me the pictures. And because that's what you would do if your friend matches someone on Tinder. It's like, hey, I'm about to go on a date. You go, oh, it's with her. And then he pulls out the phone, shows you the pictures. That's what you do. And I go, well, what's she look like? Show me the pictures. And I go, oh, no. I'm not going to show you the pictures. And I'm just thinking to myself, why won't he show me the pictures of this? Is she like the Phantom of the Opera? What makes you so afraid to show me the images? And at this point, I'm thinking the worst. I'm thinking it's an ex of mine. I'm thinking just a bunch of bad thoughts, worried for him and me and her. And so since Gavin has given me a hard time, I just go, phoom, and I turn to Colton and Hayden, and I go, Colton, Hayden, you've seen the pictures. What does she look like? And they go, their head sort of hung low. And I'm like, what does she? And immediately it's just, I know what's going on. Like that, like a light bulb. All right, I know what's going on. Gavin and I and Colton and Hayden know like the back of our hands. Deep down in our hearts, we know that this woman is a catfish. I'm not going to push him. I'm not going to pry. And so I offer Gavin an alternative question. I ask him, all right, Gavin, what are the pictures like? And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, Basically, if I were a blind man and you had to describe what the images were like, I can't use Braille to figure out her height or whatever. Tell me, as if I were blind, what you see when you look at those pictures on Tinder. And he goes, oh, she likes anime and manga and stuff, which, now, in my opinion, that is already a red flag, but for someone like Gavin, that is a good thing. But still, I'm like, Gavin, you're not telling me what she looks like. I have a purpose in asking this. So I'm going to ask you again, what are the images like? Describe them to me. And he goes, oh, they're photos of her face, normal stuff. I go, okay, photos of her face. What else? And you go, well, they're all photos of her face. And then my heart starts to sink. I love him to death, Gavin, I do. But my heart starts to sink when he says this. And so I offer him a follow-up question. I'm like, is there anything full body? I don't mean explicit. I don't mean her in a swimsuit or her like twerking against the wall, whatever people are putting on Tinder these days. I don't mean that, but is there anything where you see the entirety of who she is in an image? And Gavin goes, no, there is not. And I go, Gavin, are you sure you're not being catfished? And then Gavin goes, oh, no, I'm not being catfished. I promise I'm not being catfished. No, this isn't a catfish. And I go, Gavin, I think you're getting catfished. If nothing else, be sure. And he goes, no, man, I'm just going to give her a shot. It's probably nothing. I'm probably worrying about nothing. She's probably real. I'll just get to know her personality, whatever. And I go, Gavin, really, I think you're going to waste your time. And he goes, no, I'm not. And I have to leave anyway. And Gavin says, yeah, our date was at 7. And I go, where are you going? And Gavin goes, well, I'm just going to her dorm. And so for me, I'm like, hey, well, at least that's a good sign. Because usually what that means is, oh, they're just skipping straight to the good stuff, to put it mildly. This is a PG show. To put it mildly, they're skipping straight to the main feature. So he leaves. And so I'm just alone with Colton, Hayden, and we're just hanging out. We're having a good time. We're talking. And after about 2 hours, I'm like, Gavin hasn't come back. He's still there at Destiny's dorm. And so all three of us are thinking, oh, that's a good sign. Because he's stayed there. He hasn't been kicked out or anything. So, things are going well. And then 3 hours passes by. And Gavin's still there. We're just thinking to ourselves, man, Gavin really ate some Brussels sprouts and some celery before he went up there. Man, he's been there for a while. And so he's still there. And Gavin stays there for so long. I swear this is true. Gavin stays there for so long that despite the fact it is a Saturday night, it's too late even for me. He was there for like 5 hours before I was like, listen, I got to head out and go to sleep. So I walk back to my dorm. I say my goodbyes to all two of the boys, hoping that Gavin is having a good time and enjoying himself up there on the Tinder date in Destiny's dorm. So I say my goodbyes, walk down, head out, go back to my dorm, put the head on the pillow, go to sleep, and then I wake up the next morning to a text from Hayden. And the text from Hayden says, Sergey, Gavin's got some bad news. That's what the text says. And so I read that and I'm thinking to myself, what happened? And so I respond back and I go, what do you mean? What happened? And Hayden texts me back and says, Gavin did not get the bag. Those are his exact words. Hand on my heart. Hayden texts the exact words, Gavin did not get the bag. And I go, Gavin didn't get... I'm thinking, I don't know what this means. I go, Hayden, what do you mean? And Hayden goes, well, I'll tell you later. I'll tell you later. So I'm confused about this whole thing. What do you mean Gavin didn't get the bag? It means something bad happened. And so I'm thinking about this the whole day until I finally meet up with all three guys, Colton, Hayden, and Gavin, for dinner that night. And I'd say to Gavin, now that I'm here with you, you have to tell me what happened? And the second I ask that, Colton and Hayden start like giggling like school children. They're like, oh, you're going to want to hear this. So like usual, they already know what's up. I'm in the dark. And so Gavin starts to explain to me what has happened. Gavin essentially tells me that exactly like I predicted, exactly like I warned him, exactly like I told him what happened. Gavin went there, he opened the door to her room, and just like that, he knew right away, yep, this is a catfish. And it's I actually asked, this is funny, I actually asked him, I was like, what kind of catfish was it? Was it she was using a completely different person's photos? Was it photoshopped? What kind of catfish was it? And I swear my life just goes, let's just say they were taken a couple of meals ago. Which is like the funniest way to put that she's gained weight since she took the photos. He just deadpan says they were taken a couple of meals ago. And they were heavily filtered. And I go, okay. And so he essentially tells me that he got catfish. The images of Destiny that he saw on Tinder were not what she looks like once he arrived. It happens. It happens to the best of us. But I did tell him so. But I don't want to kick a guy when he's down. I don't tell him this at that time. And so we keep going, and then something clicks with me. Something makes sense. Something gets put together, and I go, wait a minute. Gavin, you said you were catfished, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, well, then why were you there for so long? Because he was there for like 4 hours. He was standing there for like 4 or 5 hours. We thought he was having a good time. We thought things were going well with him in Destiny. And yet, here he is telling us that he was catfished for 4 or 5 hours. That he was catfished by a fake Destiny for 4 or 5 hours. That things weren't going well. And I look at him and I go, Gavin, what were you doing there for so long? You were there for at least 5 hours, but yet you were catfished. What was going on? Would she just not let you leave? What happened? Why were you there for so long? I mean, you realized that it was a catfish right away, right? Gabe says, yes, he realizes it was a catfish right away. I go, well, then what were you doing there for so long? Why didn't you just leave? And he goes, I just didn't want to be rude. And then it was just like, okay, I can't, no. And then at that point, I was like, Gavin, I love you. I respect you. I wish the best for you. But that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And he goes, no, I don't want to be rude. And I go, listen, you know what I would do? Because I'm going to tell you, listeners, what I told him. And I go, Gavin, you want to know what I would do the second I see her face for the first time and find out that I've been catfished? The second that I see that she is fake, I'm going to tell you what I'd do. I would open the door, see her, see that she's fake, and I would look at her and then put my hand on the door handle, close the door, close it shut, turn around, walk through the hall, go to the elevator, press 1, go down, and just get out. That's what I would do. The very second that I realize that this is not what I signed up for. That's what I would do the very second that happens. So you have got to tell me why. Tell me why. You got to tell me why. You got to give me a really good, you better tell me that she was hiding Forrest Fenn's treasure in that room. You've got to give me a really, really, really good reason why you sat there and stayed for 5 hours after you found out that this chick was fake. And so I essentially tell him that. That's what I tell to Gavin. And so I ask Gavin after all of that, Gavin, why didn't you just leave? And he turns to me, deadpan, solemn as a statue, and he turns to me and he goes, well, that would have been rude. I have manners. And he proceeds to tell me, Sergey, if you just left the minute you saw her, that would be having bad manners. And so at this, I'm just dumbfounded. I'm like, where were her manners when she faked an identity and wasted your time and got your hopes up and made you spend 5 hours? Where were her manners then, huh? Where were her manners then when she did all of that? And then, and this usually doesn't happen, then Colton was like, Sergey's got a point. Which, usually does not happen. Usually Colton's like, no, Sergey, you're an idiot. But this time Colton was like, he's got a point. So Colton says this. Hayden even agrees. And I turn to Gavin. I look him in the eye. And I say, Gavin. This is why you need assertiveness training. And when I say this, Gavin starts to get indignant. And for all my Gen Z listeners who do not speak English, which is 100% of this audience, for all my Gen Z listeners who don't know what the word indignant means, it means to refute with anger. Gavin refutes with anger. It says, no, I do not need assertiveness training. Why do you keep bringing that up? Why do you keep saying I need assertiveness training? And I go, Gavin, I'm going to tell you why you need assertiveness training. I'm going to tell you right now. And I tell him and I go, the reason you need assertiveness training is because you literally got catfished by a woman who looked nothing like the photos she posted, which, by the way, is grounds for being kicked off the app and in some states, grounds for being arrested. That is true. You literally got catfished by a woman who looked nothing like her photos. And not only did you stay with her after you knew she was a catfish, not only did you stay, you stayed for 4 hours. And not only did you stay for 4 hours, you stayed for 4 hours with someone who you knew was a catfish. And you did all of that. And at no point did you think to speak up for yourself and say, hey, you're a catfish. You're doing the wrong thing. I'm leaving. You sat there and you went along with it and you didn't have the gall to say that to her. And ladies and gentlemen, that right there is the definition of having too much agreeableness. And that is why Gavin needs assertiveness training. So after all of that, I ask one more final question of this friend who I love. And I sort of close my eyes and wince, preparing for the answer. And I go, Gavin, in the photos, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was she? And Gavin goes, she was about an 8 in the photos. Then I go, Gavin, in real life, what was she actually? And I clench and I prepare myself for the answer, and Gavin goes, about a 3. And when I heard him say the word 3, a part of me broke that day. Part of me, what's that line in Godfather 2? You broke my heart, Fredo. You broke my heart. Classic scene in cinema. Al Pacino, John Cazale. Al Pacino takes John Cazale by the hands and kisses his forehead with brotherly love, but also hate. And he grabs him, kisses him, and he goes, you broke my heart, Fredo. You broke my heart. And that's how I felt when Gavin said that in real life she was a 3. That's how I felt. You broke my heart, Gavin. You broke my heart. That's the story of why I think Gavin needs assertiveness training. Then a bunch of other times that he's done stuff and is like, well, why didn't you just say no? And it's like, well, I didn't want to be rude. It's like, you wasted a whole day. You should have just said no. Gavin does that all the time. I love Gavin to death. But I tell him, and I mean this on my life, if I had $1 million, if I was the dictator of the world, if I ran everything, if I was king and I had infinite resources, infinite money, I wouldn't buy a yacht, I wouldn't buy a house, I wouldn't buy a castle, I wouldn't get girls, I wouldn't buy new cars, I wouldn't do any of that. If I had infinite resources and infinite power, I wouldn't do any of that. I'll tell you, you want to know what I'd do? I would take Gavin and I would sign him up from assertiveness training courses. So God forbid the next time he gets catfished by a 3 pretending to be an 8, God forbid that happens again. And I hope, listen, I love and respect Gavin and the whole crew. And I hope that he's learned his lesson not to do that again. But if God forbid that happens again, where he gets catfished again, I pray, if it happens again, I'm going to cry. And I mean this. If this happens again, I will break down in tears. If it happens again, Obama's president. I don't even care. If it happens again, I don't know what I'll do. But if it happens again, I'm going to look Gavin straight in the eyes. I'm going to go, Gavin, you need assertiveness training. Anyway, that's the story of why I brought up assertiveness training. Wow, it's been 21 minutes. It's been 21 minutes that I told that. I'm probably going to have to cut a lot of that down. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sound of Sergey podcast, episode 23. It has been a bit more than a week, but it's been about 2 weeks, which isn't all that bad. Thank you for tuning in to the Sound of Sergey. I miss you guys. Last episode, I told you all that I worked a job at Papa John's. And I'm going to tell you what, Papa John's is where you see the reality of humanity. Don't work it, and I'm not going to say anything about the business itself, because God forbid I'm down on my luck, down to my last $20, and I really, really, really need a job. And God forbid I have to turn back to Papa John's and start delivering pizzas again. I can go back, and they won't say, well, back in 2022, we would hire you, but back in 2022 on your podcast, you had some choice words about our business. God forbid that happens. I don't want that to happen. But I will say, if you want to lose your hope in humanity, I swear on my life, 10 years have been taken off of my life after working at Papa John's. And again, not from bad working conditions. The job was actually not that bad. But just like seeing humanity. And especially seeing, not just humanity, seeing the people who are ordering a Papa John's pizza delivered. Just seeing the humanity of this earth in southern Kentucky. Just seeing and experiencing, going door to door to see the grime, the filth. I'm talking about human beings this way, customers. To see the degeneracy. I swear this is true. A woman ordered $200 worth of pizza. $200 worth of pizza. I delivered it. And a single woman, one woman, who ordered $200 worth of pizza, wings, brownies, all of that. A single woman took all of that food. All of it. There had to be at least 10 large stuffed crust pizzas, 2 orders of brownies, 3 orders of hot wings. All of it. Like $200 worth of pizzas. And I swear on my life to every single listener listening to this podcast, hand on my heart, cross my heart, hope to die. She was by herself. She ate all of it by herself. There was no one else there. She pulls out a $5 bill and gives me that as a tip. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that if that ever happens to me again, where I deliver and make and deliver $200 worth of pizza, wings, and brownies, I want you to know that I will have a Travis Bickle moment on you. And it will be historical. and not in a good way. So, please don't be the person who tips $5 on a $200 order, especially if you're eating by yourself. Don't do that. I will. This is true. This is one of the funniest things I ever saw in my life. I was ordering, and it was kind of funny. One of the reasons I remember is because I got the order, and at Papa John's, if you deliver it, you also make the pizza too. So I delivered it, and you can see the name on the boxes, on the order. And for some reason, I recognized the name. It was like, did I go to high school with this woman? I recognized the name for some reason. I don't remember where, but I recognized the name, and so I make the pizza. And I deliver it, and it takes me to this shade, just one of the most shady apartment patches. I'm not even going to call it a complex, a patch of apartments downtown where you do not want to be at 11:30 at night. And here I am by myself, 11:30 at night, carrying like $300 worth in cash tips. And I'm scared for my life. And I swear to my life, I'm so fearful that I'm going to get jumped at this sketchy. It should have been a no-deliver zone. We had a couple of those. They should have extended to here. That's how bad, and I've lived there most of my life. You never want to go there. I hid the money, and so I went there with the pizzas in hand, walk up the stairs of this sketchy, disgusting, grimy, dark, stinky apartment. And I walk up the stairs and I knock on the door to this apartment at the address. And I swear on my life, this is one of the funniest things I ever saw. Probably the most amazing thing I ever saw delivering pizzas. I swear on my life, a woman opens the door. She's about 24, roughly. She looks about 24, 25. She's got a child. So she's a single mother, 24, living in an apartment. And so I give her the pizzas, and she's going around and, I'm going to give you the cash in a minute. Let me find it real quick. Let me get it from the table. So she looks at that, and so she keeps the door open. And while she's finding the money, I swear I look on the walls and on my heart, cross my heart, hope to die. I swear to you, this woman has like 5 different glass framed on the wall, poster-sized printouts of selfies of herself. Like literally printed to poster size in glass frames hung up on the wall. And it's not like professional headshots where she was like an actress or model or something that she's hung up. These were like literally like her in the car with like purple shadows, yellow highlights, and a dog filter from Snapchat. Her in the car, afternoon, just like photos of herself, iPhone selfies, printed to literal poster size, 24 by 36, in glass frames hung up on the wall. And she gives me the money and does not tip. And I want you to know, listeners, that woman is what every one of us should be more like. That is what every single red-blooded American should aspire to. And I'll tell you why. As much as I hate Gen Z, did you know I recorded an entire episode that got canned because I realized if I recorded it, I would lose all my listeners. Because all my listeners are Gen Z. I recorded a 45-minute, I swear on my life, 45-minute episode just trash-talking Gen Z about every single thing I hate about this godforsaken, despicable, horrible, garbage generation that is Generation Z. I recorded a 45-minute episode and I had to can it because I realized I would just lose everyone. Because that's all of my listeners. As much as I hate Gen Z, one of the things I don't like about them, that I touched on in that, is Gen Z's self-esteem is so low. God forbid you say you're good at something. Like, I've sat there doing my job in film restoration for like 6 years, like 5-6 years. I know what I'm doing. I've got invited to talks. I've taught other people. I've done official Blu-ray released restorations. I've done all of that. I know that I'm good at what I do. God forbid you say you're good at what you do. People act like you're the biggest narcissist since like Ted Bundy or something. People act like you're gonna try and take over the world unless, God forbid, you say you suck at everything. And ladies and gentlemen, my Gen Z listeners, if each and every American in this country can be a little more like that woman with the poster-sized framed printouts of her selfies, if everyone can be a little more like that, this country would be going in a better direction, in my opinion. Now, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in to the Sound of Sergey podcast, episode 23. It means the world to me that you've tuned in. It means the world to me that you've taken time out of your day, that you've put this on during the car drive home, to the family that you hate, to the girlfriend that you want to break up with but you won't, to the boyfriend who you love dearly who's cheating on you, to the job that you want to quit. Whatever it is, whenever you listen to this, maybe you listen to this at the gym and it pumps you up. Maybe you listen to this while you drive and drink a McDonald's frappe, because that's where you're at in life. Whatever it is, however you listen to this, I want you to know that it means the world to me that you chose this podcast to try to make your life better with. Has it worked? I bet the answer is no. But thank you so much for choosing the Sound of Sergey podcast, episode 23. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Servanov, SERVANOV_, because just Servanov was taken. Make sure to follow me on YouTube. You're probably listening to this on YouTube and obviously Spotify. Make sure to ring the notification bell. Like and subscribe. Buy the merch. No, I'm kidding. I don't have merch. But thank you for tuning in to the Sound of Sergey podcast, and I will see you next episode.